I ran an entire cheating ring in college, and nobody ever found out. Alright, buckle up because I'm about to tell you something that'll probably make you judge me, but honestly, I don't even care anymore. I figure enough time has passed that nobody's gonna come knocking on my door with handcuffs. So here goes. I used to run what was basically a full-scale exam cheating operation in my junior year of college. It started so stupidly small, like embarrassingly small. I was just trying to survive Organic Chem 2. You know the one, where the professor acts like everyone's either gonna become a doctor or die trying. I was so tired of busting my ass and still ending up with a C-, so one day, I borrowed my roommate's old tests to study, and realized she had the answer keys scribbled on the back in pencil. I swear to God, it was like my brain cracked open. I thought, what if I could get every single test in advance? I mean, the department reused tests constantly, so it wasn't impossible. That's when I started poking around the TA's office hours, making small talk. The main TA, let's call her Kelsey, was this really harried grad student who left her backpack lying around like it was a moldy sandwich she forgot existed. One afternoon, I pretended I left my flash drive in her office. She was out grabbing coffee. I found the master folder on her unlocked laptop. I copied everything: quizzes, midterms, finals. From the past 3 years onto my own drive. My heart was jackhammering so hard I thought I was gonna faint right there on the grimy linoleum floor. That was supposed to be it. Just a desperate move to pass. But then my friend Luke caught me correcting the practice test with total confidence and grilled me until I admitted I had the real thing. Instead of freaking out, he said, "Dude, do you know how much people would pay for that?" I tried to shrug it off, but he kept hammering me for days. Finally, I gave in. I told myself I'd do it once, just to make a little rent money. We decided I'd sell the answer key to 3 people I trusted. We charged $150 each. The worst part? It was so easy. Literally no one suspected a thing. The next week, one of those 3 people, Alicia, paid me another $50 to help her memorize the answers. She was so terrified she'd choke during the test. That's when it hit me that people weren't just desperate for the info, they wanted reassurance, a whole system. After that, it snowballed faster than I could control. I had 5 regular clients, then 8, then 15. Word traveled in this hush-hush network of sleepless pre-med kids who would rather die than flunk out. I stopped even pretending I was only doing it for me. The real insanity began when I figured out I could bribe the guy who delivered the scantrons to the testing center. He was a senior who worked 20 hours a week for crap pay, and one Friday I offered him $500 to text me a photo of the fresh test as soon as he picked it up. He agreed before I even finished my sentence. I spent the next month orchestrating this elaborate pipeline: TA laptop archives, Scantron delivery leaks, old tests from the library archives. I had a fake student ID to check them out without leaving a trail, even planting cheat sheets under the bathroom sinks. But here's where it started to get truly nerve-wracking. One morning, I got a text from the Scantron guy saying, "Dude, I can't do this anymore, I think someone's watching me." My stomach flipped so violently I almost puked. I was sure it was over. I decided to lay low for 2 weeks. No transactions, no signals. I ghosted everyone. I even skipped a lab because I was scared I'd get pulled into a meeting. Those days were hell. I couldn't sleep, and every time my phone buzzed I was sure it was the dean's office. After exactly 16 days of hiding, nothing happened. No email. No disciplinary hearing. No knock on my door. So, like the absolute idiot I am, I started back up again. Only this time, I was 10 times more careful. I bought a burner phone. I set up a Dropbox with password-protected folders. Payments went through a tangled web of Venmo and PayPal accounts that I created under fake names. And still, even with all the precautions, there were moments I was 1 second away from exposure. Like the time Kelsey walked into her office early while I was still in there, pretending to look for my lost earring. She paused and just stared at me. My heart nearly stopped. "Did you need something?" she asked, frowning. I babbled something about cleaning the carpet with my phone flashlight. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't report me either. That was the first time I thought maybe I was too deep in to back out. After that near-death experience in Kelsey's office, I swore I'd never step foot in there again. But the thing about desperation, and, honestly, greed, is that it makes you forget your own promises faster than you'd believe. 2 weeks later, final season was ramping up. Everyone was losing their minds. People were paying me so much cash, I literally had to hide it in my shoebox under the bed. One night, I counted out over $3,000 in 20s and 10s and felt this bizarre combination of horror and glee. Around then, I started working with this girl named Jess. Jess was the kind of person you'd never suspect, squeaky clean, top of the dean's list. Her dad was some big-shot surgeon. She approached me in the library with her hands shaking so badly she could hardly hold her phone. She whispered, "I heard you can get the biochem final. I'll do anything." She looked like she was about to cry, and I swear, I almost felt bad. Almost. But my rent was overdue, and I had zero moral high ground left. So I quoted her double what I usually charged, $300, and she didn't even blink. That should have been my first clue she was going to be trouble. Jess didn't want just the answers, she wanted a one-on-one strategy session, so she'd look natural if any proctors were watching. I agreed, but only if she met me off campus. We ended up at this all-night diner with sticky tables and fluorescent lights that made everyone look vaguely diseased. I laid out a plan. She'd memorize the first 10 answers cold, then skip around randomly to look less suspicious. We practiced for over an hour. I left feeling smug, like I'd thought of everything. The night before the test, I was brushing my teeth when I got a text from an unknown number. "Be careful. People are asking questions." No name. No clue who sent it. I almost dropped my toothbrush in the sink. My brain was spinning. Was it a threat? A warning? A setup? I barely slept. I kept replaying every single conversation I'd had in the last month, wondering if I'd slipped up. The next morning, I decided to walk to the exam building early, just to see if anything felt off. That's when I noticed the big poster on the door: "Academic integrity violations will result in immediate expulsion." I mean, yeah, they always had that poster. But this one looked freshly printed. New logo. New font. Like someone had made it special. For me. I almost turned around and went home. But I'd already promised Jess the answers, and she'd paid. And if I bailed, she might start telling people how much she'd spent. So I went in. I took a seat all the way in the back, where I could watch the door. My hands were sweating so badly I had to wipe them on my jeans every 30 seconds. Right before the test started, the proctor, a balding guy named Mr. Hughes who'd never paid attention to anyone, stood up and said, "We will be randomly checking calculators and personal items before the exam begins." My heart actually stopped. I'd taped a cheat sheet inside my calculator cover, like I'd done a dozen times before. I'd never once seen them check. I watched him start at the front row, moving desk by desk, tapping each student on the shoulder. I swear to you, I could see the clock hand ticking toward my doom. I was 2 rows away, then 1. My ears were roaring with my pulse. I had exactly 5 seconds to do something before he reached me. So I did the dumbest thing imaginable. I dropped the calculator on the floor and kicked it under the row behind me. It slid right to Jess's feet. Her eyes went huge, and I mouthed please. Mr. Hughes got to me and patted down my pockets. He didn't even notice the calculator was gone. He moved on. But now Jess had the cheat sheet. And I knew, the second the test was over, I was going to have to figure out how to get it back without either of us getting caught. The whole exam, I could barely focus. I kept watching Jess out of the corner of my eye, praying she wouldn't panic and do something stupid like raise her hand. When the test finally ended, she didn't even look at me. She just slipped out into the hall. I waited exactly 90 seconds before following. I found her near the bathroom, gripping the calculator so hard her knuckles were white. "You have to take this," she hissed. "I'm not getting expelled for you. Just relax," I whispered. "I'll get rid of it." I took it, stuffed it in my hoodie pocket, and walked straight to the nearest trash can. I waited until nobody was looking and buried it under a pile of crumpled flyers and an empty Gatorade bottle. I swear, I almost threw up from adrenaline. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just cheating on tests anymore. I was managing a whole criminal enterprise, whether I liked it or not. And part of me, some insane, messed up part, was thrilled by it. After the calculator incident, I knew I had to be smarter. I started treating everything like a covert op. Burner phones weren't enough anymore. I started using encrypted apps, timing my communication so there wouldn't be an obvious pattern. I was basically a walking stress ball with a permanent twitch in my left eyelid. But the money was too good to stop. Rent, tuition, food, I never worried about any of it. And there was a sick satisfaction in knowing I could outsmart the whole damn system. My next big job was the Psych Stats midterm. That class was notorious because the professor, Dr. Patel, prided herself on writing fresh exams every semester. But I had a new angle. I found out Dr. Patel was using the same testing center software as the bio department. Meaning, all exams were uploaded to the main server 48 hours before test day. The only way to access it was with admin credentials. So I went back to the Scantron guy, who by then had a girlfriend working as a tech assistant. He didn't even ask me for money this time, he just wanted me to help him write an essay in exchange for the logins. Which, in hindsight, was probably even riskier because it left a digital trail, but at that point I was high on my own invincibility. He texted me the credentials on a Tuesday night. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type them in. But when I did, boom. Instant access to every pending exam file. I downloaded the Psych Stats test, 2 versions. Then, in my brilliance, I decided to copy a few other exams I wasn't even involved with, just in case. That was my first major mistake. Because 2 days later, the Scantron guy called me, voice all shaky. Dude, he hissed, someone flagged unusual access on the server. I literally felt my vision tunnel. What do you mean unusual? Like, they said someone downloaded files that weren't scheduled for release. They're auditing the login history. You need to lay low. I hung up and sat in the dark for what felt like an hour, just listening to my heartbeat. I thought about wiping my hard drive, but that would look even guiltier. Instead, I buried the USB in the bottom of my sock drawer, under 3 pairs of balled-up gym socks I never wore. Then I told all my clients we were taking a break. Some of them freaked. One girl actually showed up at my dorm pounding on my door, sobbing that she needed the test or she'd lose her scholarship. I had to shove her into the hallway and swear up and down that I'd figure something out. But inside, I was spiraling. For a week, I barely slept, convinced every knock at my door was campus security. Every time I checked my email, I braced for an official notice. Nothing came. Then, the next Monday, I saw an email from Dr. Patel with the subject line, "Important update regarding exam integrity." I clicked it with my heart in my throat. But the email was sent to the entire class. It basically said the system had experienced unauthorized activity, so she was switching to a fully handwritten test with randomized questions. I almost laughed from relief. It meant they had no idea who was behind it, just that someone had been poking around. That day, I promised myself I'd stick to old-fashioned methods, stolen printouts, phone photos, never digital again. But you know how addicts are. I was in too deep to back out. A month later, I was back in business. But I got smarter about clients. I stopped taking random panicked freshmen. Only juniors and seniors, people who had as much to lose as me. And I created a vetting process, referral from an existing member. Minimum payment up front. No direct communication about specifics. Only coded phrases. My favorite was, "Do you have the notes from the conference?" It made us sound like middle-aged sales reps instead of criminals. Even with all the precautions, there were still heart attack moments. Like the time I almost got caught sliding a cheat sheet into a bathroom air vent. It was a biology 220 midterm. My client, Brian, was supposed to retrieve the slip during the bathroom break. I scoped it out ahead of time, wedged the folded paper way in the back so it wouldn't fall out. Except when Brian came out of the stall, he looked pale as death. He mouthed, "Gone." I almost passed out. We had a plan B, an index card taped behind the sanitary disposal bin in the second stall. I texted him the signal, 2 snake emojis. He went back in, and 15 minutes later, emerged with this tiny nod. It worked. But afterward, he swore he'd never do it again. Said his heart couldn't take it. I wish I could say I felt guilty. Mostly, I felt annoyed. Because that meant I'd have to find someone else for the next job. That was when it really sank in that this had stopped being about survival a long time ago. It was about the thrill. The rush. And even though I knew I was walking a tightrope over a pit, I couldn't stop. By this point, I'd basically accepted that I was going to live the rest of my college life in a state of permanent adrenaline poisoning. My appetite was shot, I was jittery all the time, but I kept telling myself it was worth it. But even I wasn't prepared for the scale of what came next. Spring semester, the biggest class on campus, Intro to Microeconomics, had its cumulative final. This was the class that weeded out half the business majors, and people were absolutely losing their minds over it. 3 weeks before the exam, I got an anonymous Venmo payment, $500, no message. I thought it was a mistake until an email popped up in my burner account, "Consider this a retainer." We need the micro final. No signature. No name. That was the most money anyone had ever sent up front, and I knew it had to be someone with a lot to lose. I replied in the same vague language, notes from the conference are hard to come by. We'll need access to archives. Within an hour, another email, whatever it takes. That was when I knew I was about to do something even dumber than everything I'd done before. Micro was administered in a proctored lab with a rotating password that changed daily. The only people with that password were the head TA and the department secretary. So naturally, I decided to steal it. I waited until a Wednesday afternoon when I knew the secretary, Ms. Linda, took her 20-minute cigarette break behind the building. I slipped into the office. Her desk was an absolute disaster. Sticky notes everywhere, 2 half-eaten granola bars, piles of forms. My pulse was thundering in my ears. I rifled through the papers, found a bright pink slip that said Lab PW, 7F2, QZ6 at . I snapped a photo, shoved everything back the way it was, and bolted. Later that night, I logged into the lab server from the library computers. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. But the password worked. I downloaded the test, 3 different randomized versions. When I got home, I laid them all out on my bed, staring at them like I'd just uncovered the Rosetta Stone. For the first time, I thought, if I get caught, this is jail time. But that thought lasted all of 30 seconds. Because the next day, I emailed my anonymous client a sample question as proof. Within an hour, they'd wired me another $1,000. I was officially a professional criminal. Distributing the answers was a whole new level of logistics. I decided to avoid any written or digital copies. Instead, I offered private, tutoring, sessions in my dorm, where I'd verbally run through the test. No evidence. No paper trail. I ended up scheduling back-to-back meetings for 3 days straight. I told my RA I was volunteering as a peer academic coach, which he believed because he was too busy getting high to care. It went smoothly, until the very last session. It was 11 p.m. I was running on 3 hours of sleep and too much Red Bull, and this kid, Trevor, was sitting on my futon with a look like he'd seen a ghost. I think someone's on to me, he whispered. I felt ice crawl up my spine. What are you talking about? He rubbed his palms on his jeans. I got called into a meeting with the Academic Integrity Office. They said they had reason to believe I'd been involved in collusion. My throat closed up. Did you tell them anything? No. I said I didn't know what they were talking about. But, they knew I'd been in your room. I just sat there staring at him, feeling like my skull was going to crack open. Trevor swallowed. I'm not gonna say anything. I swear. But, maybe you should stop for a while. He left, and I sat there in the dark, my heart ricocheting around my ribs. For a second, I thought about quitting cold turkey, just disappearing, deleting everything, pretending it never happened. But the next day, I checked my burner email. Another payment. Another request. And just like that, my resolve evaporated. I started developing even more convoluted security measures. I'd meet people in random places, empty classrooms, parking lots, the back corner of the library where the Wi-Fi was spotty. I made a rule, never more than 5 clients per test. Never more than 3 meetings per person. Always stagger the times. But no matter how careful I was, the close calls kept stacking up. Like the time I left a printed answer key in my hoodie pocket and almost handed it to the girl at the laundry desk. Or the time my real phone buzzed during a session, and the caller ID said Academic Integrity Office. Turned out it was just a robocall about a survey, but I nearly passed out. The stress was starting to show. My friends thought I was on drugs. My mom kept asking why I sounded so tired all the time. But I couldn't stop. I was addicted. By the time finals rolled around, my operation had taken on a life of its own. I wasn't just sneaking answers to desperate kids anymore, I had a reputation. People I'd never seen before would approach me in the cafeteria line, glancing around like they were buying black market organs. One night, I was brushing my teeth in the communal bathroom, and some dude I didn't even know sidled up next to me and whispered, "Hey, you the one with the, study guides?" I almost choked on my toothpaste. I stared at him in the mirror, trying to keep my face neutral. "I think you have me confused with someone else." His eyes flicked around the room. "No, I don't." I rinsed my mouth, heart racing, and left without saying another word. That was the first time it really hit me that I'd become a campus legend, this shadowy figure who could get you the answers to anything, for the right price. And honestly, part of me was flattered. But the attention was dangerous. I started seeing familiar faces in places I'd never seen them before, outside my dorm, in the library, hanging around the student center. I couldn't tell if I was actually being watched or if the paranoia was eating me alive. Probably both. Then came the second time I almost got caught outright. It was the final week of the semester, and I was working with a kid named Ethan on the Finance 301 final. We were sitting in a tiny study room behind the campus coffee shop. I had my laptop open, showing him the practice questions I'd doctored to look like study guides, when all of a sudden there was a loud bang against the door. I jumped so hard my chair nearly tipped over. Ethan's face went white. We both stared at the door like it was going to burst open. Then a voice called out, "Campus security. Open up." I slammed my laptop shut and stuffed it in my bag, my heart hammering so loud I thought I'd pass out. Ethan just sat there frozen, eyes huge. "Don't say anything," I hissed. I opened the door with what I hoped was my best innocent face. Two security guys stood there, arms crossed. One of them looked bored, the other one looked pissed. "Gotta report you two were smoking something in here," the bored one said, sniffing the air. I blinked. "What?" "We were studying." He gave me a long, slow look. "Step aside." They came in, glanced around, didn't see or smell anything. After a minute, they shrugged and left, muttering about false alarms. When the door clicked shut again, I had to sit down because my legs were shaking so hard. Ethan looked like he was about to vomit. "Dude, we have to stop." But I couldn't. I'd already agreed to help 3 more people that week. I told myself I'd do those last jobs and then disappear for good. Except the jobs never stopped coming. By the end of that semester, I'd made almost $15,000. Enough to cover my rent for the year and then some. But the money came with strings that pulled tighter around my neck every time I picked up my burner phone. The next big scare came from the least likely place. One of my clients, a girl named Priya, had apparently bragged to her roommate about buying the final. I only found out because the roommate cornered me in the quad one afternoon, voice trembling with rage. "I know what you're doing," she hissed. "I'm reporting you." I felt this cold wash of dread, like every organ in my body had just frozen solid. I tried to keep my voice calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie." "She told me everything." "You're going to get expelled." I don't know what possessed me, but I leaned in and whispered, "If you report me, you're implicating her, too. Think carefully before you ruin her life along with mine." She blinked, and her mouth snapped shut. I walked away, heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack them. That was the first time I realized just how much power I had, how tangled up everyone was in this. And that terrified me more than anything. Because it meant I wasn't just in too deep. I was dragging other people down with me. But did I stop? Of course not. Because by then, quitting felt scarier than getting caught. Summer break was supposed to be my reset button. I told myself, I'll go home, I'll sleep, I'll pretend to be a normal human being again. But the second I stepped through my parents' door, my phone buzzed. "Can you get me the summer session Chem 101 exam?" It was like the universe was laughing in my face. I almost threw the phone across the kitchen. Instead, I powered it off and buried it in my suitcase. For a few days, I actually tried to be normal. I ate dinner with my mom, I went for long walks, I even read an actual book for fun. But there was this gnawing feeling in my chest, like I was missing something crucial. The worst part was how bored I felt. After months of living on the edge, normal life felt unbearably flat. So when my old roommate Luke called and said, "Dude, I have a way to make an easy 1,000, I didn't even pretend to hesitate. I took the bus back to campus under the excuse of visiting friends. Luke's plan was reckless, even by my standards. See, during the summer sessions, most of the departmental offices were practically empty. Staff rotated shifts, and the grad assistants were skeleton crews. That meant records and test keys were just sitting there, unattended for hours at a time. His idea was simple: break into the storage room where they kept the master test archive and scan as many files as possible. "I already scoped it out," he said, grinning like an idiot. "The window doesn't latch properly." I remember thinking, this is how people end up in handcuffs. But I went along with it. Because by that point, I didn't even know how to say no. The night we did it, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely climb through the window. My heart was hammering so loud I was convinced someone outside would hear it. Luke held a tiny flashlight between his teeth while I rifled through the metal filing cabinets. Each drawer was stuffed with folders labeled in that neat academic handwriting: Organic Chem A, Econ 210, Statistics. I snapped photo after photo on my burner phone, trying not to think about the fact that if campus police walked in, we were screwed. Halfway through, I heard footsteps in the hall. I froze, phone clutched in my hand. Luke's eyes were huge in the darkness. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. We didn't breathe. I could hear my pulse in my ears. The doorknob rattled. Luke mouthed go. But there was nowhere to go. Then, after what felt like hours, the footsteps moved on. Neither of us spoke until we were back out the window and running down the alley behind the building. When we finally stopped, gasping, I laughed this cracked, unhinged laugh that made Luke stare at me like I'd lost my mind. And honestly, maybe I had. That night, I stayed up till dawn sorting the files. We'd gotten more than I'd ever dreamed, years worth of exams. And that meant more money than I'd ever seen. By the end of the week, I'd sold copies to half a dozen desperate summer students. My PayPal balance looked like something out of a drug dealer's ledger. But with the money came the paranoia. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for an arrest. Every knock on my door felt like the end. One afternoon, I was sitting in my dorm, scrolling through old exams, when I heard a soft tap on the door. I nearly fell out of my chair. I peeked through the peephole. It was Priya, the same girl whose roommate had threatened to report me. She was crying. I opened the door, heart thudding. "I need your help," she whispered. "I'm going to fail calc if I don't get the exam." I wanted to slam the door in her face. Instead, I let her in. Because I couldn't help myself. And because part of me liked that she was here, needing me. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just addicted to the money or the rush. I was addicted to the power. The knowledge that I was the last resort. That without me, they'd all drown. After that night with Priya, I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. It wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about control. About feeling like the spider in the center of a web I'd built from scratch. Summer session ended, and I told myself I'd shut everything down before fall. Delete the files, wipe the burner phone, disappear. But then orientation week came, and the freshman rumors started up again. I'd be sitting in the quad, minding my own business, and overhear kids whispering, "Have you heard of the guy who can get you any exam? He's, like, a ghost. No one even knows his real name." I should have felt ashamed. Instead, I felt invincible. That was when I met Heather. She was in my poli-sci elective, smart, sharp as a blade, with this cool detachment that made everyone else look like tryhards. I figured she'd be the last person to ever approach me. But one afternoon, as we were packing up our laptops, she looked over and said, "So. I hear you can make problems go away." I almost pretended not to know what she meant. Almost. Instead, I gave her the same line I'd given 100 others. "I don't know what you're talking about." She smiled, this cold, knowing smile that made my skin prickle. "I think you do. And I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." Against my better judgment, I met her that night in the back corner of the library. She wasted no time. "My dad's an alumnus. He's a big donor. If I fail econometrics, I lose my scholarship, and he stops paying my tuition. I'm not here to haggle." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside, $2,000 in cash. I stared at it, trying to act like I was even remotely conflicted. But my hands were already itching to grab it. "There's no record of this conversation," she said. "You get me the answers, and you never hear from me again." I should have walked away. Instead, I pocketed the envelope and said, "I'll be in touch." Getting that test was easier than I expected. The department secretary had grown lazy over the summer. Same passwords, same unsecured folders. I slipped in during office hours while she was chatting in the hallway, downloaded everything in under 3 minutes, and walked out like nothing happened. But this time, I decided to cover my tracks. I deleted the access logs, wiped the browsing history, even emptied the trash folder. I was getting cocky. The day of the test, Heather didn't look at me once. Just walked in, took her seat, and left after an hour. Clean. Seamless. But 2 days later, I got a call on my burner. Blocked number. I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity won. A deep voice I didn't recognize, "You're sloppy." I swallowed, my mouth bone dry. "Who is this? You think wiping logs is enough? You think no one's watching?" My skin went cold. "You're going to get caught if you keep this up," the voice said. "Take the money and stop." Then, click. I sat there in my dorm, shaking so bad I thought I'd faint. Was it a prank? A warning? Some twisted bluff? I considered quitting right then. I really did. But that night, I opened my burner email and saw 5 new requests waiting. 5 more people ready to pay me whatever I asked. And just like that, my fear turned into something else, something darker. If they're watching me, let them try to catch me. I made a decision that night, no more half measures. If I was going to do this, I was going all in. I spent the next week building a new system. Multiple burner phones, each for a different client tier. A spreadsheet tracking payments, drop-off locations, and aliases. A dedicated laptop I never used for anything else. I was operating like a cartel. And weirdly, I'd never felt more alive. But that voice on the phone never left my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it, "You're sloppy." By mid-semester, I was running what basically amounted to a black market academic syndicate. Clients came in tiers. Tier 1 paid top dollar and got full answer keys. Tier 2 got study guides, with everything but the final solutions. Tier 3 were the panicked freshmen who mostly wanted reassurance that their lives weren't over. I never met more than 2 clients in person on the same day. Never used the same meeting spot twice in a row. I was meticulous. But no matter how careful I was, the paranoia kept crawling under my skin. I'd started seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye. People hovering a little too long in hallways, lingering by my dorm door. I couldn't tell if they were real or just byproducts of living on the edge. One afternoon, I was holed up in the back corner of the library with my laptop, working on a practice quiz packet, when my real phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number, "You're in over your head." No punctuation. No name. I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor. My hands were sweating so badly they left damp marks on the keyboard. I looked around the library like an idiot, convinced someone was watching. I shut everything down, stuffed it in my backpack, and left. But as I walked across campus, I couldn't stop checking over my shoulder. I thought about disappearing again. Just cashing out and never coming back. But I didn't. Because the next day, Heather emailed me, "My roommate needs the finance final. She'll pay double." And all my rational thoughts just evaporated. Like they always did. I agreed. I set up a meet in the west stairwell of the old humanities building, this dim, echoey space that nobody used after 5 p.m. She showed up wearing an oversized hoodie and sunglasses, like she thought she was in some spy movie. Didn't even look me in the eye as she passed me the envelope. I handed her a sealed folder with the practice questions. No words. When she left, I stayed put for a minute, letting my heart slow down. But as I turned to go, I heard a click. The sound of a phone camera. I whipped around. Nobody there. Just the echo. I ran down 3 flights of stairs like something was chasing me. Back in my dorm, I locked the door and paced in circles, replaying it over and over. Was it real? Was someone documenting everything? That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining my face on some administrator's slideshow. Campus cheating ringleader. But the next day, nothing happened. No emails. No visits. No calls. I should have taken it as my cue to quit for good. Instead, I convinced myself it was all in my head. That I was just exhausted. Paranoid. And then the real shitstorm started. 2 weeks before finals, the university announced they were implementing a new security protocol for all exams, randomized seating, proctor rotations, and, worst of all, metal detectors at the doors. The announcement was everywhere, emails, bulletin boards, big flyers taped up in every building. For most people, it was a minor inconvenience. For me, it was DEFCON 1. I spent 3 straight days reworking every contingency plan I had, no more physical cheat sheets. No more phone photos. Only verbal walkthroughs in secure locations. But no matter how careful I was, there were always factors I couldn't control. Like Jess. She'd been one of my earliest clients, and now she wanted help again. For the massive micro final everyone dreaded. She insisted on meeting in person, said she needed to go over every single question so she wouldn't panic. I agreed, stupidly, and booked a private study room in the library basement. The night of our meeting, she showed up looking pale and jumpy. She kept checking her phone, glancing at the door. Halfway through our session, she blurted out, "They talked to me." I felt every muscle in my body tense. Who did? The Integrity Office. They said they know about you. That if I cooperate, I won't get expelled. I swear the room tilted sideways. Did you tell them anything? I asked, voice flat. She shook her head, tears brimming. No, but, they said they have proof. I stared at her, every nerve in my body screaming. What proof? She just shook her head again, sobbing. I felt something inside me snap. If this was the end, I wasn't going down alone. But then she looked up, red-eyed, and whispered, "I won't say anything. I swear." And for reasons I still don't fully understand, I believed her. After Jess confessed, I spent the next 48 hours in total crisis mode. I wiped every drive I'd ever used. Deleted every email account. Destroyed the old burner phones with a hammer. I even smashed my backup laptop in a panic, like that would somehow erase the evidence. But no matter how much I tried to scrub my tracks, the feeling wouldn't go away, that I was living on borrowed time. That any minute now, I'd get the official email, or the RA would knock, or I'd see campus police waiting by my door. I skipped class for 3 days straight. Didn't eat. Didn't shower. I just lay on my narrow dorm mattress, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how the hell my life had come to this. And the worst part was knowing exactly how. One little decision, just one, had snowballed into this insane mess I couldn't control. On the 4th day, I finally forced myself to go to my econ lecture. I sat all the way in the back, hood up, barely listening. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. I almost threw it across the room. It was a blocked number. Heart in my throat, I stepped into the hallway to answer. A voice I didn't recognize. Flat. Calm. Don't speak. Just listen. My knees actually went weak. We know who you are. We have enough to end you if we want to. But you're not our only priority. If you stay quiet and stop operations, we'll consider this closed. My throat was so dry I couldn't swallow. Who is this? Silence. Then a click. I stood there against the wall, clutching my phone like it might bite me. I didn't know if it was the university, some vigilante, a prank, nothing made sense. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a dozen goodbye emails I never sent. I kept picturing my mom's face when she found out, my friends acting like they'd never known me. I was done. For real this time. I ghosted everyone, no more calls, no more meetings, no more study guides. I deleted the last burner number and threw the SIM in the dumpster behind the student center. I thought that would be it. That the fear would finally stop. But it didn't. Every time someone knocked on my door, I jumped. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach flipped. Even weeks later, I felt like someone was breathing down my neck. Finals came and went. I didn't help anyone. Didn't sell a single answer. And then, nothing happened. No emails. No disciplinary hearing. No campus security waiting in my hallway. The semester ended. Grades were posted. I walked around campus in this daze, half convinced it was all a setup. That any second, I'd get grabbed by the arm and marched into an office. But it never came. Summer arrived, and campus emptied out. I went home. Tried to pretend I was just another student who'd survived a stressful year. But late at night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I'd replay everything. All the times I should have stopped. All the close calls. All the faces of the people who'd trusted me to save them from failure. It was like some fever dream I couldn't quite wake up from. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch with a beer, watching the sun go down, when my phone buzzed with an email. No subject line. Just 3 words, "We see you." I almost dropped the phone. I looked around, half expecting someone to be standing at the fence, watching me. But there was no one. Just crickets and the rustle of the grass. That's when I realized, I'd never really gotten away. Not fully. The paranoia was the price. And no matter how clean I tried to be, it was going to follow me for the rest of my life. The rest of that summer felt like I was living in some half-reality, going through the motions, pretending I was just a normal student on break. My mom would ask if I was okay. I'd lie and say, yeah, just tired. I tried going out with friends from high school, but every time someone glanced at their phone, my heart would clench. I was so used to living in a constant state of alert that I didn't know how to function without it. The worst part was, part of me missed it. The adrenaline. The feeling that I was important. That people needed me. And even though I was sure I'd finally quit, every time I got bored or restless, the thought would creep back in, I could do it again. Just once. I never told anyone the whole story. Not my best friend, not even Luke, who'd started the whole thing by pushing me to help other people. I figured the less they knew, the safer they'd be. But deep down, I think I knew it wasn't over. Not really. When fall semester started, I went back to campus early, before most people moved in. I walked around the buildings like a ghost, remembering all the places I'd hidden cheat sheets, all the classrooms where I'd passed off folders in plain sight. I kept expecting to feel disgust. Shame. But mostly, I felt empty. Like the part of me that thrived on the risk was just hibernating. One night, I was sitting in the same study room where I'd met Jess all those months ago, just staring at the scuffed table. My phone buzzed with a text. Need to talk. Urgent. No name. No number I recognized. My first instinct was to throw the phone in the trash. Instead, I just sat there, breathing hard, thumb hovering over the screen. Another text came through. I'm not trying to expose you. I have an offer. I swear my brain short-circuited. Every rational voice screaming no, every instinct telling me to walk away. But my fingers moved before I could stop them. Who is this? A long pause. Then, someone who can make your life easier. Meet me tomorrow. The old humanities stairwell. Noon. I stared at that message until my eyes blurred. I knew it was the same spot where I'd thought someone took my picture. Knew it could be a trap. But part of me, some sick, wired part, felt that old jolt of excitement again. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat breakfast. The next day, I walked to the humanities building in the surreal haze, like I was watching someone else's life. When I got there, the stairwell was empty. I stood against the wall, arms folded, trying not to look like I was about to pass out. 10 minutes later, a guy in a black hoodie slipped in. Older than me, probably late 20s. He didn't look nervous. You're smarter than I expected, he said, voice low. Sloppy sometimes, but smart. I didn't say anything. He pulled something out of his pocket, a small white envelope, and held it out. What is that? I asked, my voice thin. Your cut, he said. For last year. My mouth went dry. What are you talking about? He smiled like he knew every secret I'd ever kept. You didn't think you were the only one doing this, did you? He said. You were just the most visible. The one we let run around, pulling focus. While we did the real work. My stomach dropped. You mean, you set me up? Not exactly, he said. We let you build your little operation because it kept attention off us. But you're out now. You're too hot. I just stared. You want to stay out of trouble, he continued. Take your money and keep your mouth shut. I didn't reach for the envelope. And if I don't? His smile faded. Then you're the fall guy when this all comes down. We've got enough to make you look like the mastermind. I swallowed. He tucked the envelope into my hoodie pocket and turned to go. Stay quiet, he said over his shoulder. Be grateful. Then he was gone. I stood there, heart slamming against my ribs, the envelope like a hot coal in my pocket. Later, when I opened it, there was $5,000 in cash. And a slip of paper with a single sentence, we'll be in touch if we need you. I sat on my bed for hours, staring at that note. Realizing that I'd never really gotten away. That even if I never sold another answer, I was still part of something I couldn't see the edges of. And that was the worst part of all. Because in the end, the only reason I never got caught was that somebody else wanted me free. And I have no idea if I'll ever be free again.